Good evening, YouTube. Welcome to my 38th YouTube Live. So glad I could join you on this amazing January 17th, 2024. I just finished, last month, I finished this amazing book in Calvin Michaels' book club called The Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace. And the author is Jeff Hobbs, who went to college with Robert Peace. I highly recommend you read it. As I said on internet posts before, I don't find Robert Peace's life short nor tragic. I found it very deliberate. It was a life all about community. It was a life all about refusing what Western colleges teach us. I'm talking specifically Black people, to atomize ourselves, atomize ourselves, into white suburbia, forgetting our culture in the urban cities. And Robert Peace's life represents one that refused to do that. So it's a noble life in my mind. Very strong similarities in Robert Peace's life and mine, namely that he was an MB&B major. That was seen to be this huge deal when I was in college because Robert Peace was only a year behind me. Um, I was starting in 97. He started in 98. He graduated '02. I graduated '01. He was an MB&B major. He developed relationships with the food service workers that he kept after he graduated. I maintained a relationship with the food service workers that I kept until I graduated. In fact, I returned to New Haven to see a play at Yale Rep with the food service worker I developed a relationship with, Miss Connie Chisholm, who transitioned. We saw Seven Guitars by August Wilson. She always believed in my work. She always encouraged me. She supported my singing. She supported my work. She supported my plays. She read my plays. She read my book. So I get Robert Peace's life. It was about keeping the community and not letting the education that he got at Yale make him leave Newark, New Jersey, that he was born and raised in, make him leave that community forever and ever. Like he was not about to do that. So I would, if I had to rename this book, I would name it The Long and Deliberate Life, not tragic, not short, The Long and Deliberate Life of Robert Peace. So make sure you check out this book. Let me show this book. Let me show the cover. What I'm showing you because of the light here is not exactly clear. Here's the awesome cover here. The Long and Deliberate Life of Robert Peace, a brilliant young man who left Newark for the Ivy League, by Jeff Hobbs. The way that Jeff Hobbs narrated his death, I found very interesting. Um, it was incredible to me, is the best adjective I can think of, in that scene where he is confronted by who seems to be drug dealers. And we really don't know how he was shot. He was shot fatally. But the way in which he was shot, the conversation that took place before he was shot, the people who were around him before he was shot, we really don't know. And even though I'm getting Jeff's perspective, which is secondhand or actually third hand, as I'm reading his third hand experience, I'm just like thinking in my mind, this was Robert's time. This was Rob's time. He was ready. In that process, just before that, Jeff writes how he had fallen out, had gotten to an argument with the younger weed dealers he was employing. And so it's kind of setting up to where, okay, this is the time when the younger guy who he's arguing with is going to replace him, Rob. It was clear in my mind that that was what was going to happen from the way Jeff was writing. But Jeff didn't write that natural progression that we so often see in the urban cities between older drug dealers and younger drug dealers. He was just like, oh, this is sad. He couldn't do anything else with his life. No, he did what he was supposed to do. He was true, and he demonstrated to those younger drug dealers, you can in fact maintain your identity and go to Yale. And that for me was the most important lesson for me of Rob's life to the community he came from. He taught all the young people in Newark that you can in fact go to Yale and not lose your identity, because marijuana, smoking marijuana, just helps you keep a sense of self, is what I discovered among many people. Uh, and now it is commercialized. At the time Rob was selling it, it was very taboo. It was very seen as criminal. now it's not seen as criminal anymore. So every time I see like a um, a store that sells weed that is more prevalent now than it was at the time me and Rob were going to college, I think of Rob and how he was ahead of his time, or perhaps on time. So thank you, Jeff, for writing this important book on your college classmate, my college classmate. It made me also think about how I should have went to his service, because I remember um, reading the headline of his passing, and it just never dawned on me that I should, in fact, take the trip. I was living in Philly at the time that I read the headline. Um, I was living on City Avenue in Philadelphia. And it just never dawned on me that I should go, because Newark was not that far. I went to Newark to Amiri Baraka's service. I should have gone to Rob's service. So I thank you, Jeff, for narrating the whole service, the funeral service, but also the whole life. What an amazing, long, deliberate life of Robert Peace. I appreciate that. I just finished the novel Erasure recently by Percival Everett, mainly because I read the Variety article about Cord Jefferson's adaptation, which became this film, American Fiction, which I saw recently. I had to see it in Harrisburg, so I had to drive about 80 miles from where I live to the city of Harrisburg to see it. It was worth the drive. Aspects in this novel that I appreciated at the end. Okay, so it's basically the story of an aspiring writer who is trying to write write good literature. Let's put it like that. Except he's discovering that good literature is not necessarily the most commercially successful literature. So he pens this very he don't do this when I'm not online. He only be doing manifest only be doing this when I'm online. He only be making noise when I'm online. But that's all right. Because manifest is awesome. My cat is awesome. So he's in this moral dilemma. The main character, who is a monk, penned by Percival Everett, a Capricorn, and he's discovering that the market wants him to write these stereotypical novels. So he writes one under a pseudonym, Stag R. Lee, and it is a commercial hit. So the whole novel is a story of him managing it. And he has a moral dilemma of the need to take care of his mother. The way in the novel his sister Lisa dies is different from Cord Jefferson's film. Um, and so in the novel, because he has to take care of his mother after his sister has died, and that's a deeper financial responsibility, he chooses to pen these stereotypical novels that really reveal the deep seated beliefs and almost desires of the white mainstream audience about Black life, which is a character who has no relationship with his children, has several baby mothers, um, has no working relationship with any of the mothers nor the children. So it's a whole shit show. And that is the novel that sells. That is the novel that makes millions of dollars. So the main character, Monk, is going through this moral crisis of pretending to be somebody else who's making a lot of money, which he needs to help take care of his mother, um, but still criticizing and dealing with the seething anger, that this is what the market wants. It wants Black depravity. It wants Black pathology. In fact, he names the novel that he writes, Monk names this very stereotypical novel, My Pathology, Pafollogy. So that is the novel on which this interesting film that I saw recently is based on. Kudos to Cord Jefferson for really writing an amazing screenplay. I was skeptical when I first read about it, but seeing it brought a different angle, brought a new light to what Cord Jefferson did. There were three aspects that I want to celebrate and congratulate Cord Jefferson on that he added to Percival Everett's novel that wasn't in the original novel, but I think works for the film. It was three particular scenes. The scene in the bookstore when Monk basically he sees that his books before the big commercial hit are all in the African American studies section. And as a Black studies major, when I first saw this scene, I was pissed because I'm like, don't you have pride in being Black studies? But I get Monk. I'm not Monk. But Monk is the type of writer who wants to make money and he wants his books to be seen. So he takes his books out of the African American studies section and puts them in a section where we presume it will be more seen. So that was an interesting scene that was not in the novel. Another scene, another creative plus a creative touch that added to the story of the film was the scene where he's talking with the agent who's offered him $1 million and sirens start blaring. And because the audience knows his mother is ill and is prone to having to be hospitalized, he leaves. He leaves the table that he's talking to the agent with, which is right by a window, when he sees an ambulance, because he's thinking his mom is in the ambulance because he just left his mom with his other book agent. And the agent is thinking, because of the persona that Monk has created, that he is an ex-con, right? The agent is thinking that when Monk hears the sirens, oh, he's running from the police. So it was a creative liberty that Cord Jefferson took in making making the agent think that the sirens that Monk is hearing were police sirens. Monk thought they were ambulance sirens. It turns out that those sirens were not from police pursuing him, nor from an ambulance taking his mom. He was just nervous and worried for the state of his mother. But it worked. It worked for the whole story of the film. So shout out to Cord Jefferson on an awesome screenplay. By the way, if you're just watching this now, don't hesitate to support my Cash App. It's $Ron Fraser. I would definitely appreciate the support. And please, if you're watching this, comment, like, share, subscribe. This is Happy 2024. Happy 2024. I haven't been on YouTube Live since last year, and I'm glad to be in this year. I feel so much energy, so much positivity, so much forward movement I'm already feeling in 2024. So I wish the same for you. Please subscribe, share, like, and share my YouTube. And then please support my Cash App if you've learned something from this YouTube Live. I would absolutely appreciate it. So yeah, those are three. Oh yeah. The third aspect in Cord Jefferson's screenplay that I definitely thought worked, that was not in the novel by Percival Everett, but it was in the film, was that scene he writes between Shalinda, the commercially successful Black novelist, who you could tell Monk has a strong disdain for because her stories that get all the mainstream support are purely stereotypical. But Cord has this beautiful scene between the two of them, Shalinda and Monk, and where Shalinda has this beautiful line played by Issa Rae. And I think personally, there's no actress better at this particular time in 2024, the producer of Insecure and so many commercially successful works. She's just like the character she's playing. She's a commercially successful writer. But Cord writes a beautiful scene between Shalinda. I hope I'm getting her name right. That's the name of Issa Rae's character in American fiction, and Monk, where she basically tells him, maybe your issue, Monk, is not with me, but with the market that makes me, as a commercially successful writer, continue to be successful. And that for me worked. I think that was a moment where Monk really had misplaced anger. The only issue I had with this whole film, the men were emotionally off, even though this is a comedy drama. And so there were things that I thought were so simple for the men to do, but they couldn't do it. For example, Cliff, who is the brother of Monk, was dancing in a scene with the beautiful Leslie Uggams, who tugged my heartstrings ever since she played Grimmer in Leslie Lee's play, The First Breeze of Summer, which I saw with my Aunt Iona at the Signature Theater on 42nd Street. Leslie Uggams is awesome. Anything Leslie Uggams does is just uh, magic. But there's a scene when Sterling K. Brown, who performs Cliff, is dancing with her. And Leslie's character, who is Monk's mother, she plays Monk's mother. And you really root for her. You want her to be taken care of. You want her to be safe. You want her to be secure. You know, she really tugs at your heartstrings with the way she plays the mom, the helpless mom, who suffers from Alzheimer's, but who you want, like Monk, to be taken. You want her to be taken care of. In an interesting scene, she's dancing with her son Cliff, who is Monk's brother, and she says to him, "I always knew you weren't. I always knew you weren't queer." And we get up to that point in the story that Cliff, in fact, is queer. In fact, because he's denied it for so long, he loses his family over not admitting he's queer, and he loses his children, who he says hate him because he never came out. By the way, I could tell Percival Everett was not queer from how he wrote the novel. It seemed very um, antiseptic and distant. That was the only weakness. I loved the way Percival Everett, to come back to this novel, the way Percival Everett wrote the relationship between Monk and his sister Lisa, beautiful. And the way that the novel weaves this story in in the way that the story is weaved of the flashbacks that the main character Monk has of growing up, of the dutiful father who makes sure his children um, understand his figure as an authority, but also have a little fun, made Monk's father very, very endearing to me. He finds out, it's a beautiful, touching scene where he finds out that his father had a daughter that was not talked about while he was growing up. And Monk makes the decision to visit the daughter. And that was a strong scene. What makes this novel stronger for me as a writer, because I read novels and I listen to screenplays, the novel is so strong, and I think the novel is worth reading because of the way Everett writes Monk's conscience. That, for me, is the strength of the whole novel. The way that Everett writes Monk's conscience is through a little boy. Yeah? And the little boy, the way that Everett describes it, the little boy is holding mirror in front of, it just holds up a mirror in front of Monk. And it's clear for me, I mean, even though Everett doesn't spell it out, it's clear to me that that mirror is Monk's conscience. It's that voice inside Monk that tells him, okay, don't sell yourself all the way. Don't sell all your soul to these people. Don't sell your whole soul to the market. It's okay to give them this stereotypical story, but don't give them your soul. So that for me was a little boy. And the way that Everett ends the novel is with that little boy. We don't get that in the film. Um, we don't get that in the film. The end of the film reminded me in a weird way of Goodbye Uncle Tom. And shout out to my friend Anthony Thomas, the filmmaker, who put me on to Goodbye Uncle Tom, because he's conversing with this super commercially successful filmmaker that wants to do this film called Plantation Annihilation. And the way Goodbye Uncle Tom ends is with the story of Nat Turner, which basically was a real plantation annihilation. So, um, what Cord Jefferson doing is a weird homage to Malcolm X, because the way, this is a spoiler by the way, but if y'all don't care, if y'all care about stories, those who care about stories shouldn't care about spoilers. You know, watch the story, expect what I'm saying, and see how Cord Jefferson does it, because I think he does it very artfully and very tastefully. Um, the way that he ends, the commercially successful director is pushing back against Monk for Monk's suggested endings. He's with the director in the middle of a film, but that commercially successful director wants an ending in a certain way that he thinks will bring the draw, will make the film money, right? And you could see Monk kind of hesitant to give him that. But then Monk, gives the director what he wants at the end. That ending is quite different of the film, is quite different from how the novel ends. It's quite different. But what works for the film, for me, is Cord Jefferson's creative writing Monk's creative process. That for me worked, especially when he had the black ghetto father and the black ghetto son, and the black ghetto son shooting the ghetto father. And that's the theme that Cord Jefferson chose. It's in the middle of the film and it's at the end of the film. And the way he writes it and shows it, it's a problem. It shocks you, it disturbs you. It's meant to disturb you because you're seeing this black father shoot the son. And then at the end, you see the black figure being shot. So you see that trope, and Cord Jefferson is really getting us to question, what is black life? What is the mainstream telling us about black life? Question mark. And whatever it is, it's wrong. So make sure you check out American Fiction. Today is January 17th, my grandfather's birthday. My grandfather means so much to me. He worked on the plantation of the Frome Sugar Factory, which enabled my father to go to Manning School, which enabled me to go to Yale, which enabled me to be an author. And I'm grateful for it. This month, January, on the 14th, we lost an amazing freedom fighter in the tradition of Assata Shakur, in the tradition of Marcus Garvey. And his name is Sekou Odinga. Sekou Odinga, very much like Malcolm X, turned to Islam, was passionate about creating Black Panther Party members. But he chose to do so, and he attempted to do so at a time when the federal government, particularly the FBI, was run by J. Edgar Hoover, who, as we've read, or as I've read, or as you've read, made it his mission to, as we say, neutralize, all elements of the Black Panther Party. So Sekou Odinga was caught up in that dragnet. He was caught up in that dragnet. I appreciate what John Potash here writes. This is from page 21 of John Potash's book, The FBI War on Black Leaders. John Potash writes, furthermore, on January 17th, 1969, the day United Slave FBI infiltrators, and that's the US organization run by Maulana Karenga, murdered LA leaders Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, police shot at Bronx Panther leader Sekou Odinga, who transitioned this month. And shout out to Sekou. Thank you, Sekou, for your efforts to create more Black Panther Party members, more conscious members, just like Sherry Dalton, who is whose African name is Nahanda Abiodun, comes from that same tradition of trying to educate and spread the consciousness of Malcolm X to the younger generation. That is what Sekou tried to do. Sekou Odinga and two of the Panthers, they were parked near the Harlem River. Odinga and Panther Kuwasi Balagoon, who is queer and a very strong leader, Black Panther Party leader, escaped, period. Police arrested 19-year-old female Panther Joan Bird, whom they found cowering in the shot-up car. Similar to Assata Shakur's story, where she was wrongfully accused of shooting an officer. She was the one shot, as she told Gil Noble when he interviewed her in Cuba. John Potash writes, the police then beat her, Joan Bird, up in the precinct. Also, undercover police agent Ralph White shot a gun in the Black Panther office when Harlem leader Lumumba Shakur was in there around the same date. These mid-January attacks appear to be the culmination of a bi-coastal operation. See, this is all part of how J. Edgar Hoover's FBI successfully destroyed the Black Panther Party in the late 60s. But that doesn't take away from the importance of what Sekou Odinga stood for and why we celebrate him. Um, Hoover used various FBI undercover agents in the United Slaves, that's the US organization, and the Panthers to frame and kill the Black Panther leadership in LA and New York. This reminds me of Gregory Everett's film. He did an amazing film on the LA chapter of the Black Panther Party called 41st and Central. Make sure you check that film out. Gregory Everett's amazing film. The police officers shooting at Sekou Odinga, Kouassi Balagoon, and Joan Bird was part of an elaborate FBI and BOSS undercover agent plot against the New York Panthers. Police made a specious claim that they thwarted the three Panthers' attempts to shoot police. Now I'm going to page 22 in John Potash's book, and I'm skipping down to this paragraph that says failing to murder. Failing to murder the New York leaders that day, FBI and police then used these January incidents to launch a mass arrest of the New York Black Panther leadership. Over 2 months later, on April 2nd, 1969, police led a 5 a.m. mass arrest of Sekou Odinga, Lumumba Shakur, and Afeni Shakur, along with others, who's another Capricorn. As we approach her birthday, she transitioned a few years ago, along with others identified as the top 21 New York City Panther leaders, dubbed the New York Panther 21. So Sekou, as was Afeni, as was Lumumba, was part of that Panther 21, which was just like Marcus Garvey, arrested on trumped up false charges. And we're grateful to live in a country where they don't have to stay in jail for the rest of their life for a crime they did not commit. So he was let out, just like Mutulu was. Those three were charged with hundreds of counts relating to the alleged police precinct shooting plans and for planning to bomb public places around New York City. Only Sekou Odinga evaded the April 2nd police sweep by climbing out of his third-story window and escaping to Algeria. Once there, he joined Eldridge and Kathleen Cleaver, who had formed a Panther in Exile group. Police had charged Eldridge with firing back at the cops after they had fired a fusillade of bullets at him just before they murdered Panther Bobby Hutton. So we thank Sekou Odinga. This photo is from Marshal Eddie Conway's story. He was a Black Panther Party member in Baltimore, who also experienced infiltration from the FBI of his Black Panther Party chapter. And he gives, he was in 1981. Eddie Conway says that Sekou Odinga was charged with 6 counts of attempted murder of police liberating Assata Shakur from prison and bank expropriation. He was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life and fined 50,000. He is a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. So we thank Sekou Odinga for his work. He was born June 17th, which happens to be the same day as Tupac, in 1944, and he transitioned. I said the 14th. I was wrong. He transitioned on the 12th of January. So we thank Sekou Odinga for continuing the life and legacy of Marcus Garvey and the Black Panther Party work by recruiting new members. Next month, my book is coming out about the scholarship of Tony Martin. It will be available as of next month. You can purchase a copy at e-copy or physical copy. Physical copies are always preferred for my website, especially. Beginning next month, I'll provide more details. So again, I thank you all for joining me in my 38th YouTube Live. Please subscribe, share, like my YouTube, and support my Cash App $Ron Fraser. Keep writing, keep reading, and keep the faith. Thank you.